Well, let's say on the bustling streets of Accra, because what you find there are vendors lining up the streets, offering mouth-watering array of food to the countless general public who are rushing by. But despite the popularity of these snacks, there is a growing concern amongst the populace about the safety of the food items that they are consuming. With reports of food poisoning and other health hazards, many are beginning to question the cleanliness and safety standards of these street food vendors. Last week, one person died and more than 50 others fell ill after eating wache from the roadside in Oyibi. Here's how Maxwell Agbagba captured the situation.
A couple of years ago, Cape Coast recorded a serious incident of food poisoning. And also at Oyibi recently, a case of food poisoning was recorded. Now, the big question is, how well do we keep up when it comes to food hygiene? Today, we are here to engage with food vendors and consumers.
Oh, Michelle, Duenya City, me fan say be 5 years ni. And I'm me ton beans e mo ben kun ne keka wan pese nyina me ton bi. Beans ne koko nyina mitumbi jollof bibia ni media to ho ne se e se nipa bia de bibia be bia wo ya hweye wo e se bibia to misi market krade na akwakoto no.
I have been selling here for the past 5 years. I sell rice, beans, banku and others. I personally think you should be careful in all your dealings because anything can happen. Even at the market, check if the food stuff you are buying is good or bad. At times, people tend to buy rotten vegetables and use it to cook. And after eating, it will cause an effect on their bodies. We have to be very careful. Someone can try to use dubious means to collapse your business. Even after cooking, you might have tasted it, but something will happen. Make sure you get someone to look after your food once you are not around.
Obi betumi afa kwan bi so aye obibi e se wo nya market ana nkrofo gu so e to hade enti no obetumi abeye bibi ahye wo o hye ase nu aduan na enye ne o hye ase nu aduan me se aduan kana nka se de ibi hweye o ka hweye enti enye ne fort bia na bibi na esi enti no me so ne metumi aka fa ho enti ahweye na ye ton aduan no ye beye wo de wo aduan si so a ensoro mfi ho ube kwa mo bi ntena ho no hwema wo na kobra obi betumi afachi abeye obibi ama wenya asem.
How long have you been selling?
It's been about 2 months now.
Okay, and what do you sell?
Fried rice, jollof, and fufu, and sometimes banku.
Okay. So how do you ensure the safety of your consumers, your customers, and when it comes to food hygiene?
You know, as for food business, you have to take precautions. Even the ingredients that you use, those that are canned, you have to, when you go to the market and you are purchasing them, you have to make sure, you have to check the expiry date. You see, there are some products, when you check the expiry date, you see that they are faded. You cannot see it well. So on the safer side, you have to buy the ones that are very obvious. And when you put that one aside, where you cook is also very, very important, especially where there are many food vendors and the competition is very keen. There are a whole lot of things that people do to make sure that they sell their foods. I'm talking about spiritually, you see. And if you are somebody who happens to be getting all the markets, you know, some people, you know, they will envy you. So you have to make sure that where you are cooking, the place is in a good condition. Where if you are going somewhere, you have to make sure that there are certain people who are taking care at your back so that no one can come and drop something.
When I was coming, I didn't know anything about food, so they asked me to cut off my hair. And it's because of the food I'm using this veil, and I have to cut my fingernails, and I'm even wearing socks here. And before you even serve the food inside the plate, you have to make sure you have a napkin or maybe tissue to clean everything. You have to make sure that the bowls are covered. Like before you open those salad listing to serve, you have to, after that, you have to close it and then flies doesn't. Before we serve the food inside the cooler or as shade that we used, we washed. And sometimes we don't just put inside the floor, like you need to at least get a table or maybe something high, like you can put the something on it, like the food on top. You make sure you have a clean net or napkin to cover the food before we take it here.
At this food joint itself, I've been buying for quite some time now. I noticed that I think I was seeing here when they opened, but I've been buying for some time now. I mean, not hygiene necessarily. I would say the first thing I look at is the customer service, but then I understand why hygiene would be a factor. Personally, I didn't grow up cooking, so options like this is what I indulge in. So I would look at the hygiene, the environment in which the food, the setting is, and then I would say the community even, because if I went to a place like I want to make mention of some places, but if I went to some different places that the whole community is not really one that really cares about sanitation, I'd feel more skeptical of purchase from those kind of places as opposed to, say, an Adregano and East Legon or Cantonment or something. Right?
I've been buying here for about a year now. I think the first time I came here and after buying from this side, I came the other time and I felt like, regarding hygiene, everything here, she keeps her food very hygienic regarding her packaging and everything. So I thought, okay, it's the right place to eat. So for about a year now, anytime I come around, this is where I've been buying from.
Okay, so you think packaging, good packaging constitutes good hygiene for you?
Yeah, sure. It's a major part of hygiene. Considering if it's like a restaurant or something, you put so many things into places. But here, it's a mini market. And looking at how she keeps her food, she keeps the place cool.
Well, you see, we don't exactly have a lot of options here, and it's a campus, so we mostly go for what is available. But if I'm going to buy a certain food, I will look at maybe the type of food, maybe if it's like more susceptible to contamination. Like maybe most people think of food like fried yam or fried potatoes is like maybe more hygienic, maybe because it's fried, so they feel like the germs are gone. So maybe something like that. Even if you don't really like the setting that it's being sold in or that is being prepared in, you would still feel like, okay, it's the least bad of the choices that you could get. Let me say, one of the only other places that might seem very hygienic to other people is like really far from here. Like you have to like walk a lot or take a car or something. So these people are mostly profiting because of the proximity to the campus. So because you know that when they sit down with lectures, they'll come and buy food, yeah. So
I've bought food here about 3 times.
Okay. And what did you actually consider before you bought the food with regards to hygiene?
When I come to the table and there's leftover food, the unwashed plates on the table, that would really draw me away from the food. Yeah.
Apart from that, any other thing?
I normally watch where they wash their bowls and stuffs.
If the place doesn't have a lot of flies over there and how they've kept the place, you see how the woman has arranged her bowls and everything and how she has kept. Normally, some people have flies in their sieve and she doesn't have some in it. So I check those things before buying food.
So these are the views from food vendors and consumers. Jacqueline Ansumaya report for Joy News.
Well, some food vendors and consumers there sharing their thoughts. And what's triggering this is all about the story that we heard from OUB last week. The popular Yellow Sisi Waakye food joint, which unfortunately has become a vending point, which allegedly led to the death of at least one person, which was confirmed by the Food and Drugs Authority, while, of course, many others are receiving treatment after purchasing that food item there. But we go back to Maxwell Agbagba, my colleague who was there at the popular Yellow Sisi food joint, and sought to ask what exactly transpired there.
Well, on the normal day, you find scores of people crossing the Oyibi-Dodowa Road to buy waakye from this spot, Yellow Sisi waakye. Many of them you find in long winding queues, but that is not the case today. as we were told that many of the people who patronized this watch some days ago are now recuperating after what is suspected to be a food poisoning case. Residents here tell us that so far 5 people have died after eating this wache. We've been speaking to health authorities and they've been disputing the figures, but they are unable to confirm the number of deaths to us. They say that many of the people who are affected were taken to health facilities nearby, so they would have to call to cross-check the figures, so they cannot confirm to us the number of people who died after eating this wache. But the residents here tell me that the landlord here who rented the space to the wache seller who lives here in this house also died after eating the wache. And right behind me, family members are gathered there mourning the man who they tell us was about 60 years old. I've also been speaking to Thomas. Thomas is a tiler and he tells me that this is what he eats every morning for breakfast. He's been telling me the pain and how he was rushed to the hospital some days ago after eating this wache.
Well, my colleague Maxwell Agbagba there. At the time of the report, the rumor was that 5 people, but subsequently the FDA confirmed that only 1 died as a result of eating that food. But let's bring in now Rhoda Pia, Head of Communications at the Food and Drugs Authority, for some updates on this. And Rhoda, we're not just talking about what happened at OEB last week, but of course is a starting point for our conversation. So what's the latest updates on that case?
Okay, so we indicated in our last, good evening to all your listeners anyway, and thanks for the opportunity. So by way of quick update, we indicated in our last release to the press that some samples of the food that we found at the Yellow City joint have been brought to the FDA for further testing. And we are waiting on the results. We are conducting 2 tests, microbiology and then also the chemical test. So we hope to get some good results pretty soon so that I'll be able to share with the rest of the public.
But this has brought about the wider conversation on food safety. We do know that there are some measures that you have, regulatory ones, at FDA issuing some form of certificates or licenses to persons who sell on the streets. Is it the case that, these measures are not becoming effective, a reason for which you may be changing your strategies in the coming days?
Okay, so I must say that because, by virtue of our mandate as prescribed by the Public Health Act, we have over the years been regulating food that is processed and packaged and all that. We have been registering them and also giving approval for their sale. But over the years, we have also been taking care of the food establishments, i.e. the various eateries, restaurants, and shop bars. But we realized that street food vendors also play a very critical role as far as the provision of food for the population is concerned. So in 2001, we introduced an initiative called the Street Food Vending Permit. And we work closely with the district assemblies who have assigned the environmental health officers to us to provide some support for us to be able to identify these street food vendors and provide support in terms of good hygienic practices. And if they are able to pass the checklist and the compliance requirements, they are issued a permit. So that started not too long ago, and we've been making some good inroads, except that situations like this bring the import of these interventions to bear, and we seek to heighten our sensitization efforts in that vein and implore, first of all, the consuming public to insist on seeing these street food vending permits before they patronize the services of their favorite joints and eateries.
But for the general public, what do we need to be cautious of as we purchase, of course, and patronize some of these?
Yeah,
joints?
sure. So there are lots of good hygienic practices that we expect our food vendors to adhere to. First of all, it's required that they take the health test with the district assemblies and get their health certificate to clear them of any communicable disease before they can embark on a business to sell food. We expect that food hygiene should be one of the major requirements. I mean, taking your bath, washing your hands before you begin the preparatory processes. As a matter of fact, if you are buying food and the seller has these extensions on their nails, wristwatches, earrings, hair not covered, you just should know that some form of hygiene is not being taken care of. The seller must be in apron. The hair must be properly covered. We expect that they shouldn't be having any open wounds on their body. They should at least be having this disposable gloves when they have to serve the dishes and all. Again, if you are buying these products and these foods already cooked or processed foods, you should make sure that the seller is not having a runny nose, sneezing everywhere, experiencing colds and coughs. That should be a sign that that person is not healthy and is most likely to be transmitting germs in the process of, serving the food to you. We also expect that even the surroundings should be kept clean. The place where the vendor is selling should be far from where they keep their waste. The waste bin should be at a place where it is neatly covered so that it's not exposing the food that they are selling to any flies and other pathogens and contamination. We expect that at all times we would be cautious and be really vigilant. As a matter of fact, the sellers should not be talking while serving. They should be in, at least their face mask should be on, so that even if they have to communicate, they are not transmitting any other thing, germs to the food that they serve. The principle is that they keep a clean environment. You clean what you see and you sanitize what you cannot see. So the work surfaces, the tables, and the place where the food is served must be cleaned at all times and sanitized. So these are some of the precautions that we expect our food vendors to adhere to. Tasting the food and all. You don't just put the ladle in your mouth when you want to taste the food during preparation. As a matter of fact, if they are able to hire people to cook the food and also people to take the money and all, then obviously there should be one member of staff in their kitchens, small as they may be, who are responsible for checking and ensuring that good hygienic practices are adhered to during the sale of their wares. Because if there is any slip in terms of safety issues, the ramifications are very dire. We are talking about, in this case of the OEB, this lady has about 4 different joints where she plies her trade. Right. But as a result of this slip, people who she has engaged to work have all been laid off, as it were. So it has led to unemployment. People have been hospitalized, a life has been lost. There are possible risk of facing lawsuits and all. So I think a little bit of investment in getting someone to provide that support will be in a good direction to safeguard all of us. But as a matter of fact, it's not just the vendors that we are concerned about. When it comes to food safety, we are looking at it in all its spheres. What happens at the eateries is one of the aspects, but even in our very homes, how are we adhering to good hygienic practices? How there are homes where they leave their dishes and leave it overnight and wash them the next day.
Right.
The kitchens are not cleaned at night. It's important that before you go to bed, your kitchen should be swept, your utensils should be washed and dried. Kept in a place to dry.
All right.
Your refrigerators must be in the right cooling temperature so that when leftover food or something is left in it, they are kept intact and wholesome. At every given time, we should be careful how we handle food because, people sometimes take it for granted that eating is just a regular thing that we all do, but it's associated with so much risk, right from the preparatory point or even right from the farm all the way to the fork when it is given to you in the plate.
All right,
and talking about food safety can take us the whole day, as it were, but let's just be on at the place of caution. How we should be cautious of cross-contamination as well. You don't stock or store fresh foods with cooked foods, maybe putting fresh meat close to cooked rice in the fridge. There's going to be cross-contamination.
And I'm sure, I'm sure that there are, yes, and I'm sure that there are more factors that, of course, you'd be engaging the vendors on. But we're grateful for your time here on The Pulse. That's Rhoda Appiah. She's Head of Communications at the Food and Drugs Authority. You're watching The Pulse. We'll be back shortly.